We've been listening to a special hearing in the Seminole County Courthouse for George Zimmerman. Joining me right now is News 13 legal analyst Mark NeJame. They came specifically the motion to modify the conditions of release denied.
Right.
He is going to have to continue wearing his GPS device, and he's going to have to remain in Seminole County. And what were the lawyers trying to do by getting that amended?
It's pretty much what we talked about, Jackie, before we went and covered the hearing itself. The defense was arguing that he hasn't shown himself to be a flight risk, that he turned himself in voluntarily, and that there was no reason for him to simply go ahead and have these restrictive conditions. And as you heard the state come back, it was exactly what we expected, that he lied and he wasn't trustworthy, that this was a serious case. They were doing anything but conceding the defense's position that the case, the facts of the case have shifted and he's no longer, there's not really this presumption that he's guilty. They were very strong in saying, we think he is guilty and we think that these conditions are appropriate. The judge took what was the anticipated route and the safe route. And she said, no, there's enough here. You can meet with your lawyer. There's no issue with that. And I think what really hurt the defense is what we talked about for a while earlier. You go on TV and you hold yourself out to the public. You've got a hard task in front of you to say, well, I'm in danger, or, because you're putting yourself right out there for the public. So I think that continued showing up on TV has really, really hurt the defense as it relates to these type of requests.
Did the defense get sort of what they wanted in not a back-ended way, going around with not talking to members? The judge says you cannot talk to members of the victim's family, but you can talk to everybody else.
Yeah, they got it in through the back door, probably unexpectedly. What ended up happening is they wanted a clarification of Judge Lester's earlier ruling, which said there was a question about who Zimmerman could talk to. Well, the judge looked at the order again and says, I think the only restrictions are on the victim Trayvon Martin's family and those people, and everybody else I don't see a restriction, so I'm not going to rule. Well, by stating that, she did rule. He can talk, he being Zimmerman, can talk to everybody else but for the victim's family.
Okay. As we're looking at live pictures right now, when the motion to modify conditions of release were denied, you saw George Zimmerman shaking his head. There was a glimmer of hope he had that he would be able to move about more freely, and as you said, fearing for his life and everything, but he's been making himself very public. And the prosecution also talking about, hey, look, you were asking that you would sign autographs for people, and you've come in here through the front door, and you're making yourself available, so we don't feel that there's any harm going, you're putting yourself in any harm.
Yeah, when you do things like that, the sympathy factor are pretty much out the window. Whatever side one has taken in this case, the reality of it is that when in fact you hold yourself out, you're making public pleas for money on the internet, you're offering to sell your autograph for money, you don't cast a very sympathetic figure, and you really have a hard time having your lawyer argue both. Well, on one hand, we want to go out there and sign autographs, or at least sell autographs, and on the other, we want more freedom to move around. I think a lot of this, I know Mark O'Mara to be a very strong, good lawyer, and I think a lot of this has been, in fact, driven by George Zimmerman, by his lawyer following his bidding, which is not necessarily unusual. You're there to represent your client. You might disagree with them, but ultimately if the client, as long as it's not unethical or you believe really compromises you or the client's case, you have to go ahead and do it. So I think things such as this are the requests of Zimmerman. It makes sense because it's not consistent with the way O'Mara might be, and you've got two very able lawyers here. The state's represented by a very passionate prosecutor.
You can see that.
Far more passionate than the average prosecutor. The average prosecutor is pretty stoic and down the line. You see a lot of passion coming from Bernie, and I think he's very, very skilled, very knowledgeable, and I think O'Mara, they present a very good match each for the other.
All right, well, you'll be joining us throughout as News 13 legal analyst Mark NeJame. We'll be hearing lots more about Mark NeJame. They come back in on January the 8th, and you'll be with us, and we look forward to that.
My pleasure. Thank you, Jack.